can you explain what cross-site scripting actually is? And perhaps in this sort of interview, give us a demonstration.
I think there's a lot of misconceptions out there about cross-site scripting. Like if I go online right now and I look up cross-site scripting, I can find at least 4 mistakes in the first page. And the problem with cross-site scripting is that a lot of people, first of all, think it's only in JavaScript. That's not true. Cross-site scripting basically means that I, as an attacker, can insert a script in a website, a piece of script that's going to execute on your computer. And that piece of script can happen in any scripting language, like the notorious Flash, for example. It's an exploit in and of itself, but besides that, cross-site scripting is very possible there as well. And we don't use that anymore, of course. It happens predominantly in JavaScript because JavaScript is the predominant scripting language. It's as simple as that. Basically, it happens because a developer doesn't sanitize user input properly. And even if they sanitize user input to a degree, there might still be cross-site scripting possible. So if you have a script on your website, or it's just a normal website, and I insert a piece of HTML that says script, and then my script in there, and then /script, that basically can execute if you don't sanitize it properly. I'll show you guys what I mean by that. But I first need to talk a little bit about the types of cross-site scripting out there. Because a lot of people think that reflected and stored and DOM cross-site scripting are the predominant types of cross-site scripting. So you have stored cross-site scripting, which means that I, as an attacker, insert a value into the website and then stores it somewhere on a database or in a file or whatever, and then displays it again. I can also have reflective cross-site scripting, which doesn't touch the server. I send you a link and it contains the attack. And then also DOM cross-site scripting. And when you have a website, you have the website itself, the source code, like we can see. And then you have the DOM, which is everything around the website itself, the document object model. Things like the history, the link, things that describe your website, basically. And you can, from the source code, enter a value which enters the document object model. And that happens due to a DOM sync, as we like to call it. Now, a DOM sync, I can show you that later on as well, basically means I take a value from my source and I enter it into my document object model. Like if I have to take a piece of the, if I have to take user input and enter it in a URL, for example. That can happen through DOM or document.write. There's a lot of DOM things out there and a lot more in jQuery even. Now, I don't want you to worry too much about that because that's already pretty complicated. I'm going to keep it a little bit more simple today and talk only about source cross-site scripting. We have reflected source cross-site scripting and stored cross-site scripting on the source, but that also happens on the DOM. We have reflected DOM cross-site scripting and stored DOM cross-site scripting. Besides that, we also have blind cross-site scripting, and in recent years, mutated cross-site scripting. So there's a lot of types of cross-site scripting out there. I'll predominantly focus on source reflected and source stored. So the most basic types of cross-site scripting, basically. On hexpert.com/labs, you can find a lot of labs that I've created. These are the reflected cross-site scripting labs that I was talking about. But there's a lot more on here, of course.
To make sure that everyone's on the same page, you've got a basic HTML page here that you wrote in PHP, is that right? And then it asks for user input. Now, normally we would just put user data there, like John is your first name, and they would reflect it in the URL like you've shown there, yeah? But what you're saying is you can, rather than just a username like data, I can like try and execute JavaScript there. So that's where you use the script thing, is that right?
Exactly. So this user data is being reflected into my source code right here. Yeah. But I can enter anything in here. It doesn't have to be John. It can also be a script, for example, or a broken image with a script on it.
Just for people who don't know JavaScript, that script implies that it's going to run some JavaScript, and then alert means it's going to pop something to the screen. Is that right?
Exactly. So script is a JavaScript, like you said, and alert is gonna make that pop-up appear. Now, I talked about sanitizing user input before. The script tag is being sanitized. As you can see, nothing is reflected. So the developers have gone as far as to remove that script tag. So that would be a basic tag. If the developers filter nothing at all, that script would pop up an alert right here, a little alert box.
You've got a div class, so you've created like a piece of code, and in there you're saying alert equals $0. Is that how you're stopping alert from doing something?
It is because there's no script in here anymore.
Okay.
So if I show you the source code of this page, it would say remove anything that says script, the string script, remove that completely. For example, if I do script A in here, you can see that it removed script and only left A.
Oh, I see, yeah. So you're looking for that word script and then stripping it out, basically.
Exactly. That's a very basic defense against cross-site scripting. But it doesn't stop things that don't contain the word script in it. And on a HTML tag, this is an HTML tag, for example, an image with a source. And I can say this image is located at this location. But I can also say X to make it a broken image. So now I'm inserting a HTML tag in here with a broken image, as you can see. And that was also reflected in here. You can see, if I go here, I have created an image tag.
Yeah, so we see the image just above first name, but the image is obviously broken. So what you're saying is, and if you can just show us that code again, image, if broken, then on that error, do something, and that's how you got the alert, yeah?
Exactly. This is what we call a event handler, a JavaScript event handler. We can have HTML tags, and on there we can have event handlers, like an onload event, for example, which means that if this item loads, execute this code in here. And I've chosen to pop up an alert, and if I execute this, I can see it's a little bit hard to see. I'm going to close my source code for a second. You can see pop-up appear over here.
So basically the vulnerability here is in traditional HTML, we've changed HTML over the years to allow scripts to run within HTML, but that allows someone malicious like you to basically run code to do something that the developer didn't think would happen originally, yeah? So you're basically injecting code and the web server, whatever, is just running that code and you getting it to do something. And a pop-up, like you say, is kind of pointless, but you could steal credentials. Is that right?
Exactly. Like if we log into a website, we have many ways of authenticating. And one of them is a session cookie. And if I steal this session cookie PHP sesh ID, so I can demonstrate that as well, I can pop an alert which contains that session cookie document. Cookie. And as you can see, right now I've popped up an alert. It's the same attack that I did before, but now I'm including the cookies in here.
So just for people who are not sure, what does a cookie do? This contains the session information, so if I have that, I can connect to the servers if I'm you, is that right?
Exactly. This PHP session ID basically identifies me. This says that I am Wesley, and if you steal that, you can be Wesley as well. You can log in as me without actually knowing my password.
Let's use you and me as an example. I'm looking at my bank statements through an app or whatever. If you steal that session information, if the bank hasn't done it right, you could basically take over that session, have access to all my bank account details, and then you could take money out of my account, something like that, yeah?
Exactly.
Wow, okay.
It can be a very dangerous tag, this one. A lot of developers have tried filtering over the years, and there's a lot of filters possible for this. But the problem is that cross-site scripting is a very varied and deep attack that not a lot of people understand correctly.